Hey, everybody. I just wanted to hop on here and make a really quick correction. We discuss some of the alleged crimes against Michael Tate in this episode, and I just wanted to make sure that I state clearly they are alleged. He has not been found guilty of anything yet in court, and I take accuracy and facts very seriously. So, please forgive us. They are alleged, and we just wanted to clarify that. I also want to give just a slight trigger warning for this episode. We do talk a little bit about sexual abuse. So if that's something that bothers you that you need to just stay away from, we will see you on the next one.
There's healing in the telling. Keep on holding on to, oh brother. Oh brother. Oh brother. Standing here with you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charity, and welcome to the When Love Interrupts podcast. I've got a very special guest today, Tim Whitaker. He is the founder of the New Evangelicals, and you have the podcast. I know you have the Evangelical podcast. You and April have your own live show and podcast, and lots of, oh my gosh, so much good information that comes along daily. Keeps
Thank
me
you.
sane. Let me say that.
That is
Helps
so
me.
nice of you to say.
You're
Thanks.
very kind. Thank you. But how are you? You
I'm
want to tell us
good.
a little bit about like New Evangelicals and what made you start it?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again for having me on
Of
the
course.
podcast. It's super kind. My name is Tim. Like you said, let's see. I started the New Evangelicals by accident in a lot of ways. It was 2020, December of 2020, and I was just kind of so frustrated and kind of like concerned about the state of my tradition, which was
Yeah.
really evangelicalism.
Yes.
Could not understand the past 4 years, and watching people I knew and pastors I knew just seemed to be on the wrong side of so many issues. And I started an Instagram account called the New Evangelicals, wondering,
Right.
does anyone else out there share the concerns that I have?
Yep.
Turns out I was not alone by any
Nope.
stretch of the imagination.
Not at all.
And 4 years later, we're a nonprofit organization.
Love it.
And we are, we do, like you said, podcasts and Instagram content. We have our own app now called TNE Connect. It's our community app. And we, what we tell people is that we're committed to doing a few things. We are committed to dismantling Christian nationalism and helping people find a better path forward in their faith, politics and culture, rooted in love, justice, and inclusivity. That's kind of our sales pitch. So that's what I do.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, it's funny because my mom actually stumbled upon you first before I ever did. It was, I mean,
Wow.
you barely had begun, and it was because I went to her and told her I was struggling with my faith, and that sent her kind of reeling. And so she was like, okay, what? I will literally find anything, try to find anything that she can connect with, and because it was very similar, like, after Trump came in office, after that happened, that was the catalyst for me, basically. Yeah.
That is, I gotta say, it is. You don't always hear stories of how people find you. So to hear that your mom found me first through, I guess, the algorithms, it's just crazy to hear. So
She did. Yep, she
so
sure
nice.
did.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. She's been with you from the beginning, and
Oh,
me
my
too,
goodness.
basically, because I was like, well, but I'll give it a try, I guess. It's not gonna be anything I like. But then, of course, it was wonderful. So yeah.
Thanks.
I've just been so excited to talk to you because I feel like daily we keep getting bombarded with Christian nationalism, and we're seeing it take over so much of our top leaders' politics. I mean, I live in a very small town, and so most of my neighbors would probably identify that way. And it's been very difficult to try to have conversations, And I don't know if you've found a way that has helped you talk to people in your life, maybe family, friends that are so set on, okay, I'm a Christian, I got to vote R, I can't it doesn't matter who it is, what it is, I've got to vote Republican. And I've been blown away at the amount of people that, I really just had a lot of respect for,
Yeah.
that was the ultimate thing that mattered like the most to them.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if you've had anyone in your life that you have been able to kind of, puncture a little hole into and see if you could get.
Well, this is kind of a complicated conversation, right? Because there are so many layers to this, and
Yeah.
and I get asked this question pretty often. I also wrestle with it myself. I know that we're all looking for people to give us answers. I don't have like a really cut and dry answer. What I will say is a couple things. First, I'll say that there's a difference, in my opinion, between how we fight Christian nationalism on the political level and the local politics level, and then how we handle that on the interpersonal relational level.
Yeah. Okay.
And I tell people often, like, we need to fight like hell politically to resist Christian nationalism. It is here, by the way.
It is.
Christian,
Absolutely.
and another word for it could be Christian fascism, but it's here. The people who are in our government have a lot of power.
Yeah.
A lot of them believe that God has given them this mandate to do these things.
Yep.
If your audience doesn't know exactly why we're kidnapping people in the name of deportations, just look into Christian nationalist rhetoric. Look
exactly.
into who William Wolf is, or Stephen Wolf, or Doug Wilson, or Sean Foyt, right?
Yes.
And so it's here. There's no way around it. So we have to resist for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of all of our neighbors, especially our most marginalized neighbors, right? Because that's what Christian nationalism targets.
Yes, absolutely.
On the interpersonal level, though, like, for example, let's just say hypothetically, you have a neighbor. I have a neighbor, who I know voted for Trump, as a big MAGA guy. The question I posit is, how do you get what you want out of that conversation, right? So do you want to tell your MAGA neighbor off and call them a bigot and call them, can I curse on your show? Am I allowed to say bad words?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. Yeah, you're fine.
If you want to call them an asshole and, a POS, you can do that, and you'll probably get what you want. If what you want is no friend in that neighbor, and probably that neighbor not liking you, right? But you did speak truth to power. So I guess you can boast about it on your social media, how you stuck it to the MAGA guy.
Exactly.
If you want the MAGA person to hear you, well, I think about, how was I challenged? Because I grew up a very conservative Christian fundamentalist. I marched in pro-life rallies. I was not affirming for most of my life. I wouldn't say I was a Christian nationalist, but I was on that path for sure.
Yeah,
I grew up on talk radio and stuff. And what changed me wasn't being called a bigoted asshole on Facebook or to my face. It was people who held space for me, who asked me a lot of questions, and who challenged me in loving ways.
Yes.
And so I just think that when it comes to that conversation, when it comes to our neighbors or family members, we have to have a different approach. I mean, there are some people I see online who are like, if your parents voted for Trump, you got to cut them off. Well, you could do that, but you're not going to convince them of a better path,
Exactly.
And can I just add as a caveat, every family situation is different, right?
Yes.
Maybe there's someone listening who is queer and their family will not respect their boundaries. You have to do what you have to do. Okay.
Exactly.
I completely respect that. I'm just talking about on the interpersonal level between those kinds of relationships. They can be tricky. And I don't think the approach is, you're a bad person, so-and-so, and I'm better than you. So that will tell you. I don't think that's going to solve the problem long-term.
No, me neither. Yeah. And that's how I've felt. That's what led us to start this whole entire podcast, was to try to see if we could find some kind of middle ground where, even if we have to be like, we don't agree, it's okay. Where is all this hatred coming from? Where is all this, division? Why do we not love our, like you're saying, the marginalized, the least of these, like we've been told our whole lives? I had a very difficult conversation with my father. It was just about a week ago, honestly. And it was hard. I was having to let him know, I'm feeling called to do this. This is the podcast. I've only ever been in Christian radio, like very CCM world. And so I had to just kind of prepare him. And it obviously didn't go the way that I wanted. But at the same time, I think it helped me to also understand there are going to still be those people that it doesn't matter how you come about it, how you approach it, they're going to stick their head in the sand and just be like, no, I don't want to hear anything. Like, I don't care. You're wrong. Doesn't matter, because my husband's very similar. His father, it's very similar. And even coming from the approach of, we want to do this in a loving, compassionate way.
Mm.
That just is not even getting us anywhere, just about
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's weird to ask someone who raised you in so many ways, right? Like my family is complicated, right? They're
Yeah.
more conservative than I, but
Same.
yet, like I've watched my parents do amazing things and be generous to their
Absolutely.
neighbors, right? Like my
No.
my my
Yeah.
parents were great people to me and their family, and so it is a weird thing to witness that that paradox and that
Mhm.
disconnect. And I have found myself too, asking someone in my life, hey, help me understand how you think that ripping a family apart in the name of
Yeah.
national security when they have no criminal record, they've been here
Yeah.
for decades. Tell me how you think that's okay. And to hear their
Exactly.
justifications are kind of shocking. And it's like, I feel like your brain's been rewired by
Yeah.
right wing
I think
media
so.
and by talk
Yeah.
radio. And I'm not sure how to unwire it for you. And I'm not sure if it's my
Um,
responsibility to unwire it for you, you know?
yes. That's the point I actually got to. I kind of was like, you know what? There is I want to be here for the people that are searching for a place, that are looking for somewhere, like us. I grew
Right.
up very fundamentalist. It's funny when I listen to you and April talk because I grew up Pentecostal as well.
Mm,
And every single thing that comes out of her mouth, I'm like, "Oh yeah." Okay, yeah, literally checking it off. I've gone through exorcisms, not performed on me, but I've been in them before, like watched it at 14 years old. And
wow.
so that was hard. Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff like that. And so it is funny to see, cuz coming from such an extremist place, I feel like I still have a little bit of that. Like I want to be very vocal and loud about what is happening and how we are just destroying the name of Jesus and everything. But at the same time, I feel like every time I do that, maybe I step over across a boundary where I'm like, okay, that was too far and I came across too strong and now they're definitely not going to listen. And
Mm.
so it's hard to find that balance between people. I mean,
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can kind of take the evangelical logic that we were given and apply it here. Like if all we're doing is living for an audience of one, then regardless of the pushback, right, we
yeah,
have an obligation as Jesus people to be faithful to the way of Jesus, right? And
absolutely.
yeah, anyway, I wrestle with that too, and I feel that, and I oscillate between pure anger and rage and deep sorrow
Mhm.
and sadness and great disbelief regarding my own faith tradition and how we got here. While
Yeah.
also, I've had the privilege of interviewing hundreds of people on my
Oh,
podcast and
yeah.
talking to amazing scholars who have helped me understand how we got here. So I know how we got here,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
still don't believe how we got here. Right? It's
It's
still like
mind blowing.
bewilders me. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's almost, it doesn't how can anyone and I mean, we can look at history even and see we are walking in the same path
Totally.
as so many, like, are we going down this road? Is this really
Right.
what we want? Seeing them go from such extremes with, us as we were growing up
Yeah.
to disregard all of those worst extremes and to not only disregard it, but to vote for it and to support it and promote it, has just been heartbreaking.
Yep.
And it's definitely why I walked away for so long. I mean, I was an atheist for a while and I just had to walk away, completely walk
Yeah.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just love to talk. I would love to talk about what's going on too right now with like Iran and
Mm,
everywhere because and Israel, I
mm.
just am shocked at hearing people that I know actually kind of say, I mean, I know baby kids are dying, but it's kind of that happens in war.
Mhm.
And so stuff like that and how do you go about talking to some of the more conservative people about what's going on right now with, like, Israel? Because I know that's such a big
Uh,
we're
you know,
supposed to be,
I really don't, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. Like, I have this platform where I get to say what I'm thinking, and
Yeah.
it's a immense privilege. And
Mhm.
if conservatives don't like that, they don't have to listen. But a lot of people, who are kind of trying to find faith again or trying to
Mhm.
renegotiate faith, we all kind of get shocked because we grew up in this world that was like so pro-Israel, right?
Yeah,
Like we always have to defend Israel. And then you watch
exactly.
what happened in Palestine, and you're like, wait, again, like the math ain't mathing. Like Israel's
Yeah.
response is so disproportionate to what
Mhm.
happened on October 7th. And of course, by the way, what
Exactly.
happened on October 7th is bad and
Well, yeah,
terrible.
of
And of
course.
course, but
Yes.
you have to say that, because if you don't, people assume that somehow that, you're in favor of what happened. No, of
Yeah, I
course
know.
not. It's bad. But
Yes.
then you find out that there's been a large then you find out that October 7th is one piece in a much
Oh,
larger
yeah.
situation, where Israel is not really, painted as like the good guys in this story,
No.
taking over land and pushing
Yes.
Palestinian people out of their ancestral homeland. And so, it's been just so fascinating because Christian Zionism is so
Mhm.
integral to this world,
It
and
is.
when you grow up in it, you just assume that it's normal. But when you're
Yeah.
out of it, you realize how crazy it sounds. Like
It
there
yeah.
are people out there today, there are pastors out there today who are almost excited that Iran and
Oh,
Israel are at war, because
yeah,
that means that we're one step closer to the
for
end
sure.
of time, and that means Jesus is going to come back, right? And you're
The
like, wait a
rapture.
second. Like, you are happy about this war? Like, you wanted this war to happen, because
I
in
grew
your
up hearing
mind,
that.
when that happens, Jesus will come back. Do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
But it's part and parcel of that world.
That's it. I mean, that same. I grew up hearing the exact same things. It was always support Israel, it doesn't matter, but, all these things, and, um, now I think I'm just like, how can you well, like, Israel is not what it was in the Bible anyway, but they won't
Right,
listen to that either. It doesn't
right,
matter. It's like,
right.
"Nope, nope, doesn't," and so
Yeah,
it's just very difficult, yeah, to have conversations with people that don't I think about the, Tucker Carlson and,
oh yeah,
yeah, Ted Cruz, interview and stuff too, and I'm like,
yes,
that's what I feel like kind of how most Christians are. Like, if you
totally.
were to ask them, like, "Okay, well, where does it say that in the Bible?" Or,
Yeah.
"Where do you get this from?" They don't have answers,
No, no,
you
no. I mean,
know?
most white evangelicals have just been taught dogma. I mean, just
Absolutely.
just like how in that clip Ted Cruz could even point to the Bible verse he was talking about, right? It was just some kind of dogmatic point.
It's in
Which, by
there,
the
yeah.
way, isn't it ironic that Ted Cruz will take like 4 words in Genesis, and because of those 4 words, he'll take it so literally, he
Yeah.
will tolerate and help fund the bombing of children,
Yep.
right? But that same kind of person would say, well, we can't have affordable healthcare in this country because it's
No,
socialism. And when you say, well,
that's not a
and
right.
then when you
Yeah.
say Jesus commands us to take care of the sick, they go, well, that's not what he meant. And you're like, whoa, it's ironic. It's so crazy to see the difference, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it is Christian Zionism. And look, we can walk and chew gum at the same time,
Yeah,
right? We can all say that what the nation state of Israel is doing in Palestine and now in Iran is bad and should be condemned, and also
absolutely.
say that Jewish people deserve the right to exist and
Yes.
should not be persecuted for who they are, right? And that's
Yeah.
really important, because
Mhm.
there's this binary that we all live in America, where if you're somehow in favor of the Palestinians not being killed off in mass,
Yes.
therefore you must hate Jewish people. Or if you love Jewish people, you
Mhm.
must support the nation state of Israel no matter what. Which, by the way,
Exactly.
in many spaces, including in Judaism, is not how it works. There
No.
are millions of Jews who are
Yep.
totally against what Israel's doing, right? And there are
Absolutely.
many Palestinians that I know who are also against what Israel is doing, plus believe in the right, of course, of Jewish people to exist peacefully. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Well,
we can
that's
hold the
what's
complexity.
that is what has happened. No one can there are no semantics anymore. We can't come together and have these conversations, and you can't, like, be like, "Oh, well, this is this side, so I have to take all these views," or if I'm on this side, I have to take all these views. We're not
Right,
looking at anything in the middle anymore and being like, "Well, does that not that none of that makes sense." Like,
right.
of course, and this is one of the first issues that I really started to think about that on was, you know, why can't like, for example, why can't I say that I support Gaza and all these atrocities that are happening right now, but also say, yeah, October 7th was terrible. And I think all human life is equal and should not be murdered in pointless war,
100%.
I grew up in CCM world,
Mm,
the Christian
fun.
realm. Yeah, and so, that it's funny, I act like that, but in reality, Christian rock and hop and hip hop is what kept me from, like, just losing
Mm.
myself, like,
Wow.
growing up because it was so fundamentalist, like, I was not allowed to, of course, no Harry Potter, no anything, it's got to be Christian media only. It has to be, Christian music only. And then when it was Christian rock and Christian hip hop and everything, even that I had to hide from my dad. My
Mm.
mom was the one, she's a rebel. Let's just be honest. She's got that in her. And she was the one that was basically like, she's my child. And if she wants to listen to this, it's fine. I don't have any issue with it. And so growing up, going through all of the things that I was going through and being in this very fundamentalist space and everything, that was my outlet.
Mm.
And so I try to still remind myself of that. Like that was what did really save me. And there's a lot of beautiful people that still are in that world. And it's funny because now coming back, stepping back into the world, once again, it's been like Christian music. It's been Derek Webb, Flamey Grant, all these
Mhm.
people
Oh,
that
yeah.
have spoken to my heart. And I'm just like, yes, I don't have to throw everything out, you know?
Yes. What do you think
Mhm.
about the, Michael Tate news?
Oh, well, I'm not shocked. That's one thing I'll say is I'm not shocked at all.
Yeah.
I've only met him once. He was really nice when I met him, but um there had kind of been some like murmurings, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Within the Christian music realm. It was a very open known thing is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's what I know. It's interesting. I won't say who, but essentially, I knew a tour manager in that world who did some pretty big tours, and she told me about this a couple years, 2 years ago. She's like, "Yeah, this is how it is, and this is kind of the open secret." I'm like,
Yeah.
"People know about this." That what is shocking is how much of apparently an open secret this
Yeah.
was, and
No,
I'm not
yeah,
sure if
it
you saw the
was.
most recent allegation. But it's even worse. I saw this last night. Julie
No, I've not
Roy's
seen it.
just dropped this another piece of this that a woman has come forward saying that she was SA'd by someone on like the band tour in a
Mhm.
hotel room, and Tate was there and watched the whole thing. And there is hotel footage of him coming in and out of this. Like there's actual footage of him and this tour person like coming in and out of this room, and it kind of
Yeah.
validates the whole narrative. I'm like, listen, there's a lot of layers to this, right? Is Michael Tate gay? It seems like yes.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Of course not.
No.
Even the fact, okay, does Michael Tate drink? Okay, not whatever, but like
Exactly.
uses cocaine a lot. Okay, that's pretty bad. Okay,
That's out there.
unwanted sexual advances on young men after trying to groom them into sexual
Mhm.
favors.
Yep.
That's really bad.
Really
And
bad.
now you're telling me that you watched a woman get,
Yep.
assaulted.
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? And then Newsboys, they made a statement a couple weeks ago. We had no idea. And I'm like, look, 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 look. I
Mm-mm.
used to be a professional drummer. I never really toured, but I
Mhm.
know how much you're with your band when you do tour.
You know what's
I'm
going on.
calling that you
Yeah.
didn't think he had even a cocaine problem. I mean, I've been around people who do a lot of cocaine. They're always scratching their nose. They're always sniffing.
What?
Yeah, you just know.
You know the
You're telling
signs.
me after 15, 20 years of touring with Tate, you never
No.
saw this? Come on, guys, give
No
me a break.
way.
You
There's
you you
literally
never
no way.
heard
No.
about the open secret in CCM. Everyone but you guys knew about it. Come on, give me a
Little
break.
tiny charity in this little tiny station in
Right,
North
right,
Carolina
right,
has heard these rumors. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I
you
am
knew,
kind of
but the
like,
band didn't. Okay,
but they didn't know anything. Nothing.
It's no, no.
It
I don't think
drives me
so.
crazy.
I don't buy it.
I don't either. Charity here, just jumping in really quick to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Blue Ridge Hope. Whether you are facing depression, anxiety, maybe you're going through grief, just feeling alone, they would love for you to give them a call because they want to be there for you. They offer affordable mental health counseling, youth mentorships, and community programs that this is the best part are all regardless of whether you can pay or not. So if you would like to check them out, head over to blueridgehope.org or you can call them 828-202-3075. Thank you again so much to Blue Ridge Hope. Now back to the show. And I just wanted to let everybody know that you were able to get in now.
Yay.
And maybe you guys already broached this subject because it's kind of related to all this, but like I feel like it's money. That's why the newsboys are denying this. Do you notice how no one wants to go back to DC Talk days? No one wants to even
No, they don't want
hint
to
that
talk about
Toby
it.
Mac may have known something about his good friend and 1/3 of DC Talk.
The new thing that has come out now is that Tate just was in a room when a woman was getting sexually assaulted.
Yes, it just dropped.
Just came out.
But being assaulted
Right.
by a tech on tour with the Newsboys. Like
And
there's
even
footage of the hotel and everything.
I gotta go look
This
that
does
up. I've
not
seen it.
surprise. Sadly, this does not surprise me.
It doesn't
Now,
me either.
I've been on many a tour bus for interviews, right? And I mean, nothing bad has happened to me on a tour bus, but there are no secrets on a tour bus. Come on.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
what I was
exactly.
saying
That's
earlier.
what we
I'm
were
like,
talking about.
Newsboys is trying to play dumb. Like they had no idea. Are you
No.
kidding me? The
They
whole
have.
CCM world knew about this, but you? Come on, give me a break.
Look, all I'm
Well-
saying is Peter Fuller should have never left. Okay?
I agree.
As soon as he left, it went downhill.
And bring back the dual drum solo on the spinning, rotating
The
thing. Remember that?
Yes.
I actually have a
That
friend
was
that's a
the
drummer too, and he
best.
got to do that one time. They let him come up and play
Yes.
on the when
yes.
it was spinning. Yeah, it was awesome. Anyway, Cheryl, good. You're here.
Well, you know, I've known people that took the deconstruction journey and never came back to faith.
Right.
Yeah.
They just like went and became some raging like it's funny because like the people I know that left the faith and became atheists or whatever, they were just as evangelical in their atheism as any Christian on a missions trip trying to win souls.
A new gospel to preach, you know?
That's right.
Right? Oh,
Yeah.
so annoying. You know, I don't know that there is a solution to the double lives of people in the CCM industry. And it's just the tippy tip of the iceberg. And I'm just going on stuff that I personally witnessed and experienced when I was in Christian radio. Like, oh my goodness, we're talking like, probably 25 years ago, 25 years ago. And the thing is, people's livelihoods are based on this. And so they're going to protect these people, especially the stars that they're making a lot of money off of. And I don't know how you fix that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, but do you know what's crazy? What I've noticed though, they don't, but they will crucify and kick out anyone that comes out as queer, or they might have a view that like Christian in general, like Christianity doesn't agree with, because that was what was happening too when I was in, before I physically left the station working at like Christian radio,
Right.
It was POD. They had an album
POD,
come out.
huge fan.
Yes, I love POD. They're so sweet too. Yeah, I've met them a couple times. And like they had a song come out when I was working there, and they said in it, and it was like
So
you probably know what song I'm talking about, but they bleeped it out even though they had said it. It was my boss. He was like, well, we're just not gonna add this song, but we're not taking off the rest of their music and gonna like outcast them or whatever. And I just thought that was the best thing ever, because I was so not used to it, because I was also in music when Trey Pearson from Everyday Sunday came out, and he got destroyed. And Derek Webb and Dan Hasseltine from Jars of Clay, he became affirming and got obliterated. And so, so I don't understand why that happens. But then when they're hiding all these things, like these sins that, I think are actual sins, they'll find a way to justify and kind of get around.
Yeah.
But it's a business. So that's why.
That's why.
That's why. Yeah.
So frustrating.
I've never understood. So I'm looking at this, from this side. I've been over on the mainstream radio side since the early 2000s now, although I still do a Christian show. But I've never understood why it has to be separate. So I started in Christian radio, playing all the CCM hits. And when I got over to mainstream radio, I was amazed at how many people I knew from church were actually like listening to the mainstream station. So like everybody's listening. Why does it have to be separate? Why can't just good songs be good songs and it all kind of coexist together? Why does an entirely separate industry have to exist? And yeah, why does an entirely separate industry have to exist?
I wonder, I'm curious, Tim, if you think this could be some of it. I really think it's about control. I think it's about keeping people, well, first of all, they know they can put all this out and make a lot of money off it, because people like me growing up, we're not allowed to have anything that didn't have like the Christian title on it. But keeping these people in line and in control and, separate from the secular and the bad or whatever, that's their moneymaker. That's where it's at, and so I think that could be some of it, because I agree with you, Cheryl. I don't understand it. And most of the bands, yeah, you go ahead.
A lot of the that white evangelical world is so built on like a separation of the world, right?
Yeah.
You can't be worldly, but I
Absolutely.
think they also know that like it's okay to be. I think that they also know that people are going to be attracted to what like culture has to offer, and so the
Yes.
vibe is like, well, if we can offer a Christian version of whatever the world's offering, then we can just kind of build our own networks of like the alternative. And
And they did that.
also there is this huge fear, right, with parents of like their kids being indoctrinated, quote unquote, by worldly forces or
Yeah.
secular influences. And so
Right.
it's a way for parents to like not feel like little Johnny's being indoctrinated because they're listening to, X band. But if they have the Christian version, that's like the same kind of music, but only Christian lyrics, right? And so I think all
Right.
over time it's become such a huge industry as well. I mean,
It
it's like
has.
I mean, they top the charts, I think
It's
that
insane.
they've created such an industry based on that premise of,
Mhm.
hey, we're safe. What was it, K-Love, that was like friendly and safe or something like that? There was some mantra that they had that was like, I
Is
forgot
it
what it
safe for
was,
the
but
whole family?
yeah, something like
Oh,
that, And
that I
so
think that is that
like
like focus on the family maybe? I can't
maybe, but
remember.
there was there was a local radio station by me that called Star 99.1 that would, talk about that. But yeah, my point is that like I think it's based on that too. The idea of like, well, we're safe for children. We're not,
Yes.
the music that they're inhaling has
Mhm.
lyrics that reinforce our worldview, our theology. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
I think you're
But
right.
it's
That's exactly it.
brainwashing.
It is brainwashing.
I
Well,
mean,
A
yeah,
lot.
and the reason why it's brainwashing is it's not because they believe it, but because they don't allow kids to explore beyond its boundaries
Yes,
fairly, right? So
exactly.
it's
right.
like, look, everyone has their beliefs, obviously. I mean, I have
Mhm.
2 kids, right? We're going to raise them the best way that we know how, and with that includes giving them something about how we see the world and giving it to them.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
is unfair, or what would be unfair, is if we told our kids, this is the only way you're allowed to live because this is the way that God wants you to live, and anything
Yeah.
beyond this is problematic. Right. That's
Yes.
the hook. It's not the belief itself. It's the fact that like it's so narrow
Mhm.
and it's so high control that it didn't
Yeah.
allow people to really be able to experience other ways of being that, by the way,
That's true.
most people live quite successfully, right?
Yeah.
Most people
Right.
have very fulfilling lives outside of
Mhm.
the evangelical Christian world, but you're
Yes.
not taught that. You're taught that everyone but
No.
you is like just waiting to fill this God-shaped hole in their heart. But lucky for you,
Yes.
you have it. That's the problem,
Right.
in my opinion.
I think you're
I
right. Mhm.
agree. And that's
Yep.
kind of what I experienced when I got out of, because like I started in Christian radio, and I mean, brief history, I grew up in church, went to Christian school. So like, the whole separate world, like that was me up through most of my life until
Yeah.
I ended up getting into mainstream radio. And for the first time, I was working with openly gay people,
Mhm.
people that were Buddhists, people that were just hedonistic, just living each
Mm.
day, because you never know if you're going to try. I mean, a wide variety of people. And what I personally experienced was some of these people were embodying the Christian principles I'd been taught as a
Yep.
child,
Yep.
even more
Yep.
than the Christians I had
Same.
worked
Yeah.
with and gone to school with. And it was just a real like mind-blowing moment. I'm still kind of trying to reconcile that.
Yeah.
That is exactly my story. My meeting my I when I was 18, I worked at Starbucks, my first, real big boy job,
Yeah.
and one of my coworkers was gay. I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh my gosh, he's gay." Like, I've been warned about the
Yeah.
gays, And
Right.
then I found out that he was an atheist. So I'm like, oh, double whammy. You know, there's
This is
nothing
terrible.
yeah,
I
there's
know.
nothing redemptive here.
Things
Turns
are
out, to your
bad.
point, he volunteered more than most of my church friends did in his local community. And
Yep.
I was like, what do I do with this? Like, you're a
Mhm.
normal person. Like, you love people well. You're not trying to sleep with me. I thought that all gay men just wanted to have crazy sex with every man that they lay their eyes upon, right?
Yep.
These
Right.
great, you know, it's
Yep.
embarrassing to say it now, but that's what you're taught.
No.
And so it's like one of those things where it's like you realize that, again, beyond the, I call it the basement of fundamentalism, or beyond the bubble, right?
Mhm.
Like, other people are living actually quite whole lives,
Yes.
and they don't give one flying about our
Nope.
theology or the
No, they
Bible
don't.
or what we think about, you know, if God predestined or didn't predestine someone to go to
Yes.
heaven or not. Like, it's not in their worldview at all. And they live
Mhm.
a quite compelling life that is attractive, you know,
Yeah,
and moral.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And authentic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I, you know, for the longest time growing up in church and in the whole Christian separate world,
Mhm.
for the longest time, I thought Christianity was just like a performance, and the better at it you were,
Mhm.
you know, you could like work your way into heaven or whatever. It's just crazy because, and it's because as a small child and growing up, it kept getting reinforced that you're this way in front of other Christians and you
Yep.
say certain things and do certain things. And then, you know, when they're not around, you just do whatever and you get really good at this double life and hiding it.
Yeah.
Every Christian I know does this.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you are free to be who you really are inside and you can be authentic,
Mhm.
you don't want to live a double life. And I think people can trust you, they can relate to you better
Yep.
because they know you are what you're portraying. It's not an
Exactly.
act.
100%.
Absolutely
And
agree.
I
Yeah.
just it's sad that I don't there's so much to unravel. How did Christianity get to this place? And my understanding is it's not like this everywhere, but pretty much America.
Mm-mm.
It's pretty
Well,
unique, this
it
way of
is pretty
thinking, for
unique, I
sure.
would say. I feel like a lot of it started back with, you know, Jerry Falwell and good
Mm.
old televangelists and stuff, especially from my side, because, you know, Pentecostalism's all about that televangelism and stuff. But yeah,
You want to talk
seeing
another
especially political.
mind-blowing thing?
Yes.
So Tammy Faye Baker,
My
so
queen.
I'm
Sorry.
growing up in my Christian home and I'm going to my Christian grandma's house after church or just, you know,
Mhm.
whatever. I'm there. She's watching PTL and my sweet grandma and my mom talking trash about Tammy Faye Baker's makeup. I'm just like, you know, and then
Yeah.
so as a little kid, you're like, oh man, she's like, what is wrong with her? You know, you just have this opinion of people, right? And then turns out plot twist, Tammy Faye Baker was so loving
Yeah.
to gay people and so
Mhm.
accepting of
Yep.
everyone. I mean, she used to always say, Jesus loves you just the way you are. I'm
Exactly.
paraphrasing. And, but yet so many Christians were so unkind just based on how she
I remember the
chose
same
to,
thing. I can remember the same thing,
yeah.
hearing people say the same thing about her, and I was just like, "But she seems so nice." Like, you know, it's not that big of a deal, you know, but yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
I was listening to some of the episodes on your podcast, which it's funny because when I was listening to you talk about your struggles with anxiety,
Mm.
it could have been my story, and it's one that I don't think I recognized until I was an adult, but I've
Yeah.
always been an anxious kid,
Mm.
and is and who knows what the seed of that is. I'm just kind of exploring that, but I feel like the church, the evangelical church, really made that worse and actually uses that as a
Mm.
weapon to control people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that that's, you know, the term evangelical is so broad and it's
Mhm.
a pretty big tent, you know, in the charismatic space, like in April's story, right? She
Mhm.
talks about how there's a lot more language of like demonic oppression or, you know, this being something like that the devil's doing to you. In my tradition, which was a little more reformed, a little more John MacArthur, John Piper-ish, it
Gotcha.
wasn't so much that, it just really wasn't talked about. And it was, you know, hey, just trust the Lord, just trust that God's
Mm.
working it all out for his good kind of vibe, and for
Mhm.
your good. I definitely think that, you know, mental health is not talked about enough, but I would argue more importantly, like not understood enough and not kind of like what we were talking about with the CCM being an alternative to secular music, right? You have
Yes.
these like Christian counselors that are kind of the alternative to secular therapists. And I'm not saying that they're all bad people, but a lot of them, first off, they're not trained like a
No.
psychologist, because you can get certified, in many different ways that isn't really as like thorough. But a
Yeah.
lot of them give you, solutions that are like Bible based. And I'm sorry, the Bible is not a mental
No.
health book, just
No,
like
it's
how
not.
it's not a cookbook, right?
Yeah.
Like I would never expect a chef to be like, well, listen, we're a Christian company. We only use the Bible for our recipes here. It wouldn't make any
Sorry. Yeah.
sense, We're like, well,
It's
why
crazy.
would you do that? And the same thing goes, I think, for mental health. Like the Bible is not a mental health book,
No, it's not.
because it just wasn't. It's not. That's not what it is. And we rely on modern science and modern medicine to fix our pains and aches and our backaches
Yeah.
and stuff by
Anything
taking Tylenol.
physical.
But for some reason in the church, seeing a therapist is like, whoa, like that's so crazy. I
Yeah.
definitely think that there are churches out there who will weaponize people's pain and suffering for their own benefit. In fact, I will tell you, when I was going through the most intense parts of my brain being broken, I really was desperate. I mean,
Yeah.
I was listening to anyone I can get my hands on to try and solve this feeling I was having that I could
Yeah.
not shake. That was so dark and so dreadful, and just this like, it wasn't a cloud, it was a category 5 hurricane,
Oh, yeah.
5-7 days a week, 365 for a good year or so. And when you're in that space, you will listen to a mega church pastor. You will listen
Absolutely.
to,
Yeah.
Tony Robbins, right? You will listen to whoever you can, and you'll pay, if you're desperate enough, whatever you need to, if they're offering you some kind of remedy to that solution. And I think
Exactly.
a lot of these Benny Hinn types, these, name it and claim it preachers,
Mhm.
really prey on people who are in a desperate space mentally,
They do.
by giving them false hope instead of
Yeah.
pointing them in the right direction. Honestly,
That
Yeah.
100% correct. And I've actually been saying this for quite a while, like you were saying, like, because for the majority of my life, it was, if I needed help with anything, you just go see one of the elders or the preacher. Even I'm gonna leave names out and everything, but that was also told to my brother, who was having difficulty in his marriage. And so they started seeing one of the pastor elders. That was what was, recommended to them versus like an actual therapist or anyone that, And long story short, my brother's ex-wife and the elder are now married. And
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, after they convinced her that she needed to leave the house because he was probably too dangerous. She could leave the kids there. That was fine.
Right.
He wasn't gonna hurt them. Yeah, but yeah, and so,
Yeah.
yes, that
I
it
don't
does happen.
I don't know where pastors, or where this world got the idea that pastors have to be experts on everything. But it's
Right.
really wild.
I don't
Like
know.
a pastor should be an expert, hopefully, on the Bible, not
Yeah,
on marriage
yeah,
counseling or therapy. Listen, we all have friends that we would trust their advice on, right? So
yeah.
it makes sense to have someone that you trust, that maybe you want their advice on a marital situation, but to see them as some kind of like authority expert
Mhm.
in that field that can work through your marriage, it's just ridiculous when you think about it. I would never go to
Absolutely.
my pastor if my back ached.
I
I would be
know.
like, "Hey, should I take Tylenol or ibuprofen or Aleve? You got any?" And well, as a pastor, that makes
Just
no sense.
pray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
What are you
exactly,
taking? Pray it
exactly,
all. I know, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's
But
wild.
Yeah. I've seen several Christian counselors over the
mhm.
years. My most recent story was here in California just a couple of years ago. And I was just having a really hard time connecting with people. My anxiety was out of control.
Mm,
And through, listening to podcasts and doing some reading, I'd kind of figured out that it was somewhat connected to trauma
mm,
Mm.
and childhood trauma. And I had unwound some of that with professional therapists
Mhm.
when I lived in Oregon. But I'm giving the church, because they have a whole counseling department set up. So
Wow.
I'm figuring, oh, there's so many, and I'm bound to get a good one. And a friend recommended her, and I'm kind of unwinding some of the traumas that are connected to church and my parents,
Mhm.
and I'm just going down this list of things that have legit been called out as abuse by other therapists, and she just stopped me and she was like, well, that was a different time. And parents really in that era did not really, they didn't treat kids like we do now. And she's like, you're just going to have to forgive and move on.
Wow.
Okay.
And I feel like if sure, that would be great. But
Don't you
if it
think
were
I would
that
have already done
easy,
that?
I wouldn't be here talking to you right
Right.
now because
Right.
I've had a lot of time to kind of
Right.
try to forgive, and I'm here because I
Right.
just need help.
Right.
So I think it borders on malpractice, honestly. But I don't see that changing.
No.
Because once again, we have this whole separate world, right? And they
exactly.
have tax exempt status. Like, it's like they don't have to operate under the same rules and
No.
regulations that the rest of society does.
They don't.
And I don't know how we fix that, honestly.
No, I know.
I
Don't
don't
either.
think, I don't think that there is a solution. I think that we just go and not be in those spaces anymore. I mean,
Yes.
me and my wife, we see a marriage counselor every week who's secular. He's gay. He's great.
Perfect.
We love it.
Yeah.
We have great sessions, and like
Yeah.
he's super helpful, super
Exactly.
informed. And it's like we see him not because we're on the brink of divorce, it's just because we want to keep our marriage going strong. You know, so we check in once a week with him. It's great. And you know, I don't think we would have the same experience with a Christian counselor. I mean, listen, I've been to Christian counselors, and they mean well, but it wasn't those people who really got me through the worst parts of my mental health crisis. It was a secular Jewish man who talked super direct to me. He was a noble, and he's like, yeah, start doing these 5 things and come back next week and we'll talk about it. And that was the beginning of, like, you know, real healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so accurate. Yep.
Yeah.
It's great.
I actually got more relief from my anxiety from a naturopath that was telling me to do things like get out and get nature therapy for at least 30 minutes a day, and what supplements to take, you know, if you can get your body to a good baseline. You know, your brain's an organ like anything else, and then you can reason better, right? You can process things better if that's healthy.
Absolutely.
From a physiological standpoint. But you know, naturopath.
Love that.
But I mean, yeah, it's fun. Oddly enough, it is really funny. Our therapist that me and my husband, we see he is a Christian, but he is not a Christian counselor. He's an actual psychologist. So it was like, you know,
that's nice.
Good.
There's so much to unwind, isn't there?
I know. I could talk for hours and hours and hours.
That's why we all have podcasts, right? Because that's where there's so much to unwind.
That's what I was going to say. There's so much to say. And so, and daily new things happen that come out. And I just want to combat that any way possible.
I know.
And I think this right here, like building a community of people that, you know, are trying to reach other people that maybe, you know, are kind of left behind.
Yeah.
Not, you know, and support each other. I think that's probably what it's going to take.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way, 100%.
Yep.
Well, and I think having conversations like this is so important because, you know, there's people out there that are fully existing in that world, but they know that it doesn't feel right and they can't be their authentic self, but they feel like that's sinful to be their authentic self. They're going to go to hell for being their authentic self. So I think these kind of conversations are important. Normal people that have faith and are living that out in an authentic way. And if they see more people and hear more things like this, then maybe it emboldens them to take those steps to authenticity.
Exactly.
100%.
Absolutely. I agree. And that is exactly, I was one of those people. I was telling Tim how even though, you know, it's Christian rock and hip hop and everything, you know, it was there for me at a certain period when I needed it in my life. And then it's really funny because but it was queer Christian music at the second part of my life that kind of, you know, spoke to me so much and got me back to where I am now. And so, yeah.
Love
but
that.
anyway, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. We hope to see and talk to you again, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you want to see my personal stuff, it's at Tim Whitaker Speaks. I have an Instagram and Substack where I talk
Perfect.
about just my own views on things.
Okay.
And the organization I run is the New Evangelicals. So anywhere that you see the New Evangelicals on TikTok, Instagram, podcasts, etc., YouTube, that's where I'm at.
Please, everybody, please check them out. They are changing our country.
Oh
And
boy.
it's amazing. Oh, you are. Slowly but
Yeah.
surely. It takes time. It's okay. It's happening.
Takes
We're
time.
going to
Yeah.
get there.
We're
That's
getting
right.
there.
Thank you, Tim. And I hope
Thanks
we
for
talk
having me.
soon again.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.